Hello, viewers. This is Senator Jim Runstead with the Runstead Review. But before we get into this interview, here's what you really need to know. This past Sunday, the Michigan State Board of Trustees took two extraordinary steps, both deeply controversial. First, they moved to crack down on dissent within their own board. Secondly, at that same meeting, they approved a $1 million pay raise for President Kevin Guskiewicz and extended his contract through 2031, effectively doubling his compensation. That's right, doubling it. This is something that every one of us here in the state of Michigan should be paying attention to. It is your tax dollars. It is your transparency that we need. Thank God we have a phenomenal trustee for the Michigan State Board, Mike Balow, and he's here with us today to kind of give us a little more of the background information. With that, Mike, very, very happy to have you here on the show. So why don't you give us a little bit of the background?
Yeah, well, good to see you again, Senator Runstead. I mean, it's a pleasure being here with you today, and thanks for reaching out. You know, it's been a hard last few days for me. I've been on the job there as a trustee for probably, it's been 1 year and maybe 4 or 5 months, right? So not new anymore, but not too long in the tooth. And one of the things I ran on was transparency and making sure that we could have rigorous debate on things so that the people and the families and the students would know that, the issues are being raised and dealt with in an adult manner, and that we'll get to the best decision through like a normal, healthy American process, if you will. Unfortunately, what transpired since last Wednesday night was kind of a shoving through of really bad policy. Like, we already had a code of ethics policy, which was fine. And the mechanism for trustees, as any politician who does bad things, like if we get convicted of a felony or commit fraud or things like that, there's a process to discipline and recall and things like that. But what we can't have is any sort of ability for our colleagues, right, whether they're in the majority or the minority, to weaponize the system against other colleagues based on people get upset that someone said something a certain way, or they think it shouldn't have been said at all, or they think it was disloyal to the institution. None of that matters. What really matters is that the people that we elected to do the job for the state of Michigan, the 8 trustees, are independent thinkers, can speak freely without fear of retribution. And in that way, when we're talking about policy, both inside the boardroom and then out amongst the people in the state who want to talk about such things, that we can talk about that and not be afraid of being gone after through like weaponization of the system.
Yeah, it's the way it ought to operate. Whenever I hear this, you're disloyal to the system. You look what's happened at some of the universities here in the state of Michigan, some of the catastrophic decisions, lack of oversight, people sleeping at the switch, and people that were whistleblowers shut down, not allowed to bring this stuff up. It doesn't do any good for anyone really here in the state of Michigan. And it's not like it's their private entity. It's not their private business. It's taxpayer dollars.
That's right.
And I've been called every name in the book. You think of it, I've been called it. So the people, if they're, colleagues on the other side of the aisle that are saying that, well, it's either up to me to respond, or, if their voters disagree with their position, then they can vote them out. And the same thing with a trustee. The trustee should be able to express themselves. And if it's something that the voters feel is not in the best interest of the university or the state of Michigan, then they vote them out. But for the board president, I believe is the president,
The board chair.
is the one that is pushing something that really is curtailing transparency as it pertains to the procedures. What's happening with the taxpayer dollars. I mean, the whole thing is run by taxpayer dollars. I don't understand the thinking. I don't know if she gave you some more examples, or how did she kind of lay the groundwork for you guys?
So it started last Wednesday at 8 o'clock when we had a kind of an emergency meeting we were told earlier in the day, and only 7 of the 8 of us could be on the Zoom call Wednesday. And one of us was in Egypt. It was like a 7-hour time difference, so it was less than ideal. And there were 2 things. One is she thought that the president was maybe looking at another job and had another offer, and we needed to act quickly to keep him, because clearly all 8 of us wanted to keep him. We thought, and think he would want to stay there. So it's not a situation like anybody's driving anybody out of town, like, has happened in the past to other schools. But along with that was kind of a lack of information and context around that. Like, I was hearing language like, we think he has another offer. We think it's this much. We don't know where, we need to act now. And I said, how about we ask him to come to the board and talk to all 8 of us at one time? Wouldn't that be a good idea? Couldn't get that. And then it became, in addition to restructuring the contract, we need to sign this code of ethics as it's written. And believe you me, on Wednesday night, there was like a red line document that was like 80% red ink and 20% black ink. It was a sweeping rewrite of our existing code of ethics in all the bad ways. I mean, the final product is offensive enough where it takes away our right to free speech if we say anything, like you say, misleading or inaccurate or disloyal, right? The original version had like we couldn't say anything negative at all about the university or else, and other things. Even though it got softened a bit, it still is about, 100% offensive. And so the reason there was, well, this is what the president wants. He wants this to be signed to make his job less stressful and things like that. And I said, you're making the man sound like a weakling. He is a strong individual. I can't believe he would say such a thing, And I'm like, I'm not going to believe it unless I hear it from him. And so we argued about that. And at that point, we were going to have an emergency meeting on Friday night. And I said, I completely object to that. Like, this is bad policy, bad methodology. Eventually, we got somebody, I don't know who, because it takes 5 votes to get the meeting set up, the special meeting. Someone pulled their support. So the Friday meeting went away. And the president was going to talk to people over the weekend so we could hear from him ourselves. So I had a conversation with the gentleman who I get along with on Saturday morning for an hour. At no point did I find him demanding of a raise himself over the top or saying you have to sign these code of ethics. It was just like, we have things we need to work on. I just want to know that you guys want me here. I want to stay here and we'll work on things. I said, absolutely. I want you here. All 8 of us want you here. I'm sure they'll tell you that themselves. And we're going to figure this out. And I said, I'll give you a blank check for my time. I'll come sit with you on any of your issues. I'll pick up the phone and talk for 5 hours, whatever you need. From that point on Sunday, other people claimed they had different interpretations of what he was saying. So the game of telephone was in full effect here. And on Sunday morning, I sent out an email. I said, enough with the nonsense. Let's get on a call, the president and the 8 trustees, and let's figure this out. Couldn't make it happen. So I thought something was weird about that. Like somebody was trying to control the narrative, if you will. And I said, if we can't agree on basic facts here, I'm not going to support either one of these measures. And I said, it's a darn shame because we already said we want to keep him. There's a right way to do that, right? To have his representative and the board's representative talk and share numbers. What does it really need to be? And that's a separate argument, because he had a great package to begin with. I mean, there's a lot of money and fringes and living in the presidential house, and we gave him a distinguished professorship with a stipend, and there's a lot of good things. Now, he certainly wasn't the highest paid president of the Big Ten, but I think it was toward the top. But look, this is the way this goes, Senator. Like, if you have a talented person, other people are going to want him, and you got to figure that out. But Michigan State is bigger than just one person. That's the thing, too. I think a lot of people and trustees are like, oh, my God, we need to do whatever we can to keep our president. And I'm like, yeah, to a point, right? Like, we have a budget to run here. We're going through 9% cuts. The legislature is talking about cutting state funding for higher ed. Tuition and fees have reached the breaking point for families in Michigan at $5 gas. I mean, college is expensive. We can't just willy-nilly be throwing money around. And so you have to balance that with wanting to keep the person. So I said, board, slow down. We can take a few more days. We could get better information and figure this out. No, we got to do this now. So Sunday remained on the calendar. And then I said, at least take off this code of ethics thing, which should not be coupled with the compensation. No president in America should be dictating to their board what the board can or cannot do, right? Because the president works for the board. And in this case, again, he said to me he did not, but our chair claimed that this is what he strongly wanted. These words were chosen carefully, right? And so I said, I can't accept that, and I can't accept the raise because it's not going through the proper channels. Sorry, and I can't compromise my principles for anyone to do this job. And then furthermore, I said to the board, if you really want the president to be happy and keep him, scheduling this meeting on a Sunday night, which kind of reeks of trying to slide it past the goalie, is not a good look for the president or for us. And with the, dissent that you're going to have and the good discussions you're going to have, it's not going to seem like we have consensus on these things, which he probably would prefer. So I said, because you're doing it in all the wrong ways, it's not going to end up like you hope it might. And I think that's what happened is like most people see it for what it was, which was a blatant power grab by a majority on the board to bring the hammer down on a vocal minority who they just want to stop talking. And you can't do that under our U.S. and state constitutions.
It's interesting, that background and the idea of putting both of these together. You're right. That's a lot to pass, to absorb, to sell on the other side, as opposed to, okay, well, we have a scenario here where the president may have another offer. We don't know. should we increase the offer? But separately, including all of this censorship, it makes the whole thing look so dirty that
Yes.
it's just people who are and don't have any thought of how it's perceived by the public, just a tin ear
Yes.
to what is the public perception. With the universities, they have to do things in an open and transparent way
Yes.
because so often in the past they haven't, and it's cost them millions,
Yes.
tens of millions, hundreds of millions,
Half a billion in
half
the
a
case,
billion. Yeah. So,
500 million in the case of the Nassar settlements.
right. So these just astronomical costs compared to whistleblower types being able to say, wait a minute, I see some here. Let's get some answers.
Mhm.
Trying to shut down discussion, shut down transparency is just such a bad look.
That's
And
right.
I'm so glad you are one of the, what, three
Yeah.
that are objecting.
Yeah, and this is a bipartisan issue now, Senator, because I'm it's 7-1. I'm the only Republican. I try to get along with everybody. I never try to make it about Republican or Democrat, but there are two of my colleagues, Dennis Steno and Dr. Rima Vassar, who agreed with me that this is horrible policy because they realize how the system can come after you when you speak out on something, as they experienced before. And the more I learn about that place, the more I realize that it's a wonderful place with great people. But there's this like desire to control things, right? And not let the real story out. And I think that that is what hurt them. I'm sure that that is what hurt them in all the years after the Nassar scandal, because they could have been way more forthcoming, released documents, claiming privilege when they shouldn't have, and trying to protect whoever there, when they could have years earlier released documents and done the independent investigation, which they've never done to this day.
Hmm.
To this day, about who knew what and when there. And when you talk to certain people, they're like, oh, we've heard enough of it or whatever. I'm like, "Yeah, well, tell that to the families whose children were harmed there. You know, like as a father who sent my daughter there, I'll never get over that people who ran that place thought that they were enabled to make that decision to protect the home turf at the expense of what justice really should have been.
Yeah, and that's disappointing to hear that they didn't do a complete investigation of how it came about, who was culpable. Whenever I hear that stuff, it's so frustrating that it's the system taking care of itself,
That's right.
turtling up and making sure that they don't get information out there.
Right. And for anyone who really loves MSU, like that school does so many great things we have like 550,000 living alumni, right? Like 75% of our undergrads come from the state of Michigan, as opposed to like say 49 or 50% at U of M, which U of M is great, but MSU is the state school that provides opportunity for our young men and women. And we try, it's expensive, and everything I'm thinking about is how to make sure there's the value story. Like how do you make it less expensive, but make sure the jobs are there after graduation? Every little thing we do that is like to protect the insiders versus like letting the truth in is harmful to our reputation, and it is disrespectful for all the families that put their hard-earned family wealth into sending their kids there. I mean, I don't know of anything more offensive than to have the attitude of, well, we know best. We're going to keep the truth in-house, and anyone who dares keep talking about a controversial issue or whatever is going to be censured and have all their privileges stripped to humiliate them. What I say is, if you want to take away my football tickets, I wasn't put there to be a fan. I was put there to do a job. And I'll fight you tooth and nail, but I'll go root for the Spartans from the student section, who I enjoy spending time with, because those kids, they might screw up because they're kids, but they're not like the adults there that are making really poor decisions that can cost us millions, if not billions of dollars, right? We got to keep our eye on the ball here, Senator, and make sure that the adults are in the room and we're standing for what's right at these universities.
And everything I've seen about your tenure on the board has been consistently trying to be transparent, trying to watch the budget. It's wonderful to see. Did they actually do the vote that night, or how did it turn out?
Yeah, the vote was 5-3 on the code of ethics, and it was 6-1 on the compensation. 6 yes, 1 no. I was the no, 1 abstain, which was Dr. Vassar. And I explained, said I think the president's doing a good job. I think the board has handled this extremely wrong. It's not good for him. And without more complete data and facts and the truth of what was really going on, like I said, I couldn't even get everyone to get on a call with the president so we could talk about it together. Think about that for a minute. And yet we were going to be on a call on Sunday night voting on a package worth millions of dollars. And we talked about where's the money going to come from. To the credit of one of our trustee Pierce, thought she could get it from the donor community. But even there, it's like you're still going out to people, getting the money, and maybe that money could have gone somewhere else too for scholarships or something. I mean, people can give wherever they want. It just was something that didn't feel right and normal in terms of how it was being done. And I've been around long enough where if I feel something's not quite right, I like throw up the red flag, hit the brakes. Let's time out. Let's talk about this. It's not like, no, we need to push through because we're worried about something, we're worried he's going to leave. I'm like, if he's that sure he's going to leave and we're not getting the respect of a conversation and to talk about it as adults, like the 8 board members that hired him, then there's a problem with that, right? Despite all the other good things that are going on. And the other thing I want to say is the timing of this is curious because look, I've been who I said I would be. Like I go there, ask questions. I'm respectful to everyone, but if I want to see a document, I want to see that document. If I want to answer, I want to get that answer. Early on, I asked to see the unredacted, what we call the NASR documents, right? Like the 6,000 document dossier. I've reviewed them in their redacted form, but there's a lot of black boxes on there. Now, I have the right to see them unredacted as a trustee of that university, but I was stopped by the general counsel and he said, I'm not going to give those to you because you're not entitled to them. I said that, heck, I'm not entitled to them. I'm the elected trustee here. You give me what I asked for. And I still haven't been able to resolve that. And you think about that for a minute. When we were doing the private equity athletics investment, it was in December. And I said, I need to see all the legal documents related to this $100 million investment in terms of like when these private shares are sold, like who could our partner be? I don't want a casino as our partner. Can we have a veto right? And I need to see all these details. The general counsel wouldn't give me those. And I said, you have to give me those. And I couldn't get the support from the president of the board to make him do it. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to let this go. Any one of us has the right to walk into any room on that campus or to see any document to see things that we need to understand to cast our vote appropriately. Once you hear no, it is like nails on a chalkboard. It's like, why can't I see that? What are you trying to hide from me? And when I have that feeling, I kind of like get upset and I double down and I don't become disrespectful, but I keep asking the question. And so that's what you're seeing here is like the 3 trustees that were asking the most questions about the investment into athletics are the 3 trustees that voted no on the code of ethics. And they appear to be the 3 trustees who are being targeted here a little bit. Like if you violate this code of ethics, we're going to do this, this, and this. It's like policing. Like we're not here to police each other as elected officials. We're here to try to find consensus and work together. And I said, like if some trustee wants to go off the rail and if they're acting crazy or whatever, their actions will speak for themselves. I don't need to try to tell them to be quiet. They have every right to do what they're going to do, and people can judge them accordingly. Same for me. And like you said earlier, if people don't like any elected official, they can recall them.
Yep.
The process is there. They can vote other people in, but you cannot weaponize the system against your colleagues who are also freely elected. We can't have that in America.
And I've never seen a good rationale for that. If you're saying you're going to go into an executive session to discuss a contract or a lawsuit or something very specific, that there is a real reason why you would have this temporary executive session. Everyone can understand that. Outside of that, as long as I've been elected official, they better not tell me, oh, no, you can't find out. So some vendor, some attorney can know, but the elected official
Right.
by the people can't know.
Right.
That's dirty up and down the line.
Right.
I have no trust in any of this lack of transparency because we can't trust that you're going to be a team player. It's not about being a team player. It's doing the right thing. Sometimes that means the people who are making the decisions, as at MSU in the past, weren't making the right decisions. You got to have people stand up and call that out and have the independence to be able to do it.
That's right. That's why the people put us there. If we do any less, then we're not doing what we need to do for the people that elected us. And I can't think of a worse thing for anyone elected to office than to abandon the principles that they said they had to get that office, right? That's what we need less of in this country today. We need people who are genuine, honest, and are trying to do the job at these public institutions for the people, not just a select small group of people.
You're absolutely correct. And before we wrap up, I was at a function this morning, and there was a parent there who had their child. I can't remember if it was Michigan or Michigan State. They had applied for like 37 different internships. And the one that they finally got an interview had 80 interviews, and their son got the position. And that kind of reminds me of what was happening when my daughter graduated from Michigan State, and that was in 2011, and there was no jobs. They used to have tables full of vendors, all kinds of companies were looking for interns. She was a finance major, and when she graduated, there was nothing. And she was just saying that the parent was saying to this group this morning that the kids are really worried about AI's impact on their future. I mean, they're literally terrorized by this. And I don't know how much of that discussion's going on or how MSU plans on dealing with all this.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really starting to be talked about. I mean, it terrifies mid-career professionals too, as well.
That's true.
Kids graduate college, and everybody knows, like, how do I use it to my benefit to get better? But in the back of your mind, you're like, is the field, especially for the college kids, is the field that I'm dedicating all my hard work to at this moment going to be providing me a job in 2 years? Because it's changing that fast. You look at computer coding and programming and things and how that used to be like a great field to go into. And it was like a guaranteed good first paycheck and a start to your career. And now I think the general feeling is, well, the computers are going to be doing a lot of the coding. So that's not what you want to be studying. It's a good thing to know, but it's not like a guaranteed good job. So, I feel really, I empathize with our students who are trying to find, because if they're trying to find the major to get a good job, that solves one problem. Because we've talked a lot about kids who are like, well, I'll just study anything and it doesn't matter what's available. It's costing you a lot of money to get that degree. You want to think about that. So if they are thinking about that, but the market flips on them before they can get out of school, I mean, that feels pretty bad, right? Like, so that is like right now a pretty tough problem to solve. But that's one of the cool things about Michigan State. We got a lot of smart people who are willing to talk about that, think it through, and maybe we can change our educational requirements accordingly. And by the way, that's one of the great things our current president, Guskowitz, has been doing. Like, he's taken that on and he's looking at workforce development, changing the general education requirements. He's tuned into the cost of education. That's why, for the life of me, I can't understand the nonsense that we've just gone through, right? Like, he's there, he's doing a good job. The place wants him. There's some kind of weird, like, external influence here where people are throwing a fly in the ointment saying, well, there's controversy on the board or people are upset. It's like, what company have you ever seen in your life, or what enterprise where everyone just gets along swimmingly? Like,
Never.
grown-ups are like, okay, we had a bad day, right? Like, we get along. Like, that guy's tough to deal with, but we're going to figure it out. Like, for some reason, and it's not unique to Michigan State and higher ed, there's this like throwing up of the hands, like saying, oh, you're too difficult to work with. You need to leave now, and that's not the way the real world works.
No.
Not where I come from.
I've never known anyone, even the person in the mirror, I agree with 100% of the time. Even the person in the mirror, I have to say, does he got it right? So getting people,
Maybe yesterday.
getting people in a board to be uniform on everything is just not going to happen. I mean, it's just the way it is.
And I tell people too, I'm like, if the board was 8-0 on everything, and I was sitting there watching them, which I did. I went to all these board meetings for 4 years studying the board as I was running. I'd be like, that's not true. That's not true. You're lying to me.
Yep.
It's not 8-0. You're just doing that for the cameras. So I'd rather you state your position, defend it, vote accordingly. Now, there's no question. The majority wins and the policy goes with the majority. But that doesn't mean I have to like it if I think it's unconstitutional. That doesn't mean I have to stop talking about it and reminding people. But that's what this particular majority says. Like, well, you lost the vote, so now shut up. You can't talk about it. I'm like, no, because that's what you want. Because then it becomes like yesterday's story, and you're like, even if it was unconstitutional, he's not going to talk about it anymore. That's not what our state needs right now.
No, and nor ever. So, Mike, at this point, this vote has been taken, but votes can be changed. So what would you advocate, whether it's the people in Michigan, the legislature, what would you advocate they do as an action point maybe to help fix this problem?
I think people in the state should call or email or write, the Board of Trustees, and you can find that information on our website. Just Google MSU trustees, and you can find email addresses and things like that. The Office of the President, and express what they really think about the school, the administration, and some trustees trying to silence other trustees. People should also contact their local state legislator to let them know what they feel. And the legislature as a whole, the Senate and the House together of both parties, should make it known to the MSU board that this is not acceptable policy in our state. It's not good for either party. It's not good for the students, and it's not good for the people of the state of Michigan.
Well, I just did a floor speech in the Senate this morning on this issue. So at least in the Senate, the whole chamber is aware, and I think you have a lot of support there. So, I'd urge the public at large. Their taxpayer dollars are going into this, and they need to have the transparency. So hopefully that will happen.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you.